What would you do if you overheard your own daughter-in-law call you disgusting? Right in front of your disabled son. I didn't confront her. Instead, I did something that would change all our lives forever. And trust me, you won't believe what happened next. You know, I always thought the worst thing I'd ever overhear in my own home would be the sound of the dog getting into the trash, or maybe my husband trying to sing along to the radio in the shower. But life, as it turns out, has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. That particular Tuesday started out like any other. Nothing special, nothing out of the ordinary. I'd gone out to run a few errands, pick up some groceries, and maybe treat myself to a coffee and a scone at the little bakery on Main Street. I was feeling pretty good, actually. The sun was shining, my favorite song was playing on the radio, and for once, my knees weren't aching quite as much as usual. I even found a parking spot right in front of the store, which, as any woman over 50 knows, is a small miracle in itself. I came home a little earlier than planned, arms full of shopping bags and a mind full of to-do lists. I remember thinking how nice it would be to just kick off my shoes, put the kettle on, and maybe sneak in an episode of that British baking show I love before anyone noticed I was home. You know how it is. Sometimes you just need a little peace and quiet, a moment to yourself before the chaos of family life comes crashing back in. So there I was, purse in hand, shoes off, tiptoeing through the hallway, because let's be honest, who wants to hear about their own loud footsteps from their daughter-in-law again? She's always had a thing about noise, as if the rest of us are supposed to float around the house like ghosts. I was just about to call out, maybe ask if anyone wanted a cup of tea, when I heard her voice. It was sharp, almost metallic, slicing through the quiet like a knife through butter. "Your fat mother disgusts me." I stopped dead in my tracks. For a moment, I thought I must have misheard. Maybe she was talking about someone else. Or maybe I'd caught the tail end of a conversation that had nothing to do with me. But then she said it again, her voice dripping with contempt, and there was no mistaking it. She meant me. She was talking about me in my own home to my own son. My heart did that weird little skip, you know the one, like when you realize you left the oven on, but 1,000 times worse. I felt the blood rush to my face, my ears ringing with a mix of shock and humiliation. I pressed myself against the wall, half hidden behind the doorframe, not daring to breathe. I know, some people would have marched right in there, demanded an explanation, maybe even thrown her out on the spot. But in that moment, I felt paralyzed. It was as if the world had tilted sideways, and I was just trying to keep my balance. I could see them through the crack in the door. My son, bless him, sat in his wheelchair, his hands folded in his lap, staring down at the floor. He didn't say a word, he just sat there silent and still, probably wishing he could roll right out of that room and disappear. My daughter-in-law, on the other hand, looked perfectly at ease. Her legs crossed, her phone in one hand as she scrolled through something or other, not a care in the world. She didn't even look at him as she spoke, as if her words were just another part of the background noise, like the ticking of the clock or the hum of the refrigerator. I stood there invisible, feeling 1,000 emotions crash over me all at once. Anger, of course. How dare she speak about me that way, after everything I'd done for her, for both of them? Hurt, too, deeper than I cared to admit. I'd always tried to be a good mother-in-law, to give them space, to help out when I could without overstepping. I cooked their favorite meals, watched their dog when they went out of town, even bit my tongue when she redecorated the living room in those awful shades of gray and beige. I'd done my best, and yet here she was, tearing me down behind my back. But more than anything, I felt a kind of cold, creeping fear. Not for myself, really. I've been called worse things in my life, and I've survived every one of them. No. What scared me was the look on my son's face. He looked so small, so defeated, as if he'd heard these words 100 times before and had simply run out of ways to defend me or himself. My son, who used to light up every room he entered, who used to make me laugh until I cried, now sat there like a shadow of himself, shrinking under the weight of her words. I wanted to rush in, to wrap my arms around him, to tell him that none of it mattered, that I loved him no matter what. I wanted to tell her off, to remind her that this was my house, my family, and that she had no right to speak to either of us that way. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I stood there, rooted to the spot, my hands shaking, my mind racing. I thought about all the times I'd bitten my tongue, all the times I'd let her little jabs and snide remarks slide, telling myself it was better to keep the peace, to avoid making things worse. But this was different. This was a line crossed, a wound that wouldn't heal with time or kindness. I realized, in that moment, that something had to change. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine, couldn't keep sacrificing my own happiness for the sake of a family that no longer felt like my own. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew one thing for certain: I wasn't going to let her words define me, or my son, ever again. So I slipped quietly back down the hallway, my heart pounding in my chest, my mind already turning over possibilities. Maybe you've been there yourself, caught between anger and heartbreak, wondering what your next move should be. Would you have confronted her right then and there? Or would you, like me, have chosen silence, at least for the moment, letting the shock settle before deciding what to do next? As I sat alone in my bedroom, the words echoing in my mind, I realized that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is wait. Wait and watch. Because when the time comes, you'll know exactly what needs to be done. And when I finally made my move, it would be one she'd never see coming. I said nothing. Not a word. I just backed away, heart pounding, and spent the next week replaying those words in my head. Your fat mother disgusts me. It echoed in my mind at the oddest times, while I was folding laundry, stirring soup, or even just brushing my teeth. It was like a splinter under my skin, impossible to ignore. No matter how hard I tried, I kept thinking, is this really how she sees me? As some kind of burden and embarrassment, a problem to be whispered about behind closed doors. I'd spent years holding this family together with nothing but duct tape, casseroles, and sheer willpower. I'd been the one to sit by my son's hospital bed after his accident, holding his hand through every surgery, every setback, every tearful night. I'd been the one to welcome her into our home, to make space for her in our lives, to try, really try, to be the kind of mother-in-law who didn't meddle, who didn't judge, who just wanted everyone to be happy. And yet here I was, reduced to a punchline in my own house. But here's the thing about women our age: we don't get mad, we get even. And sometimes we get creative. There's a certain power that comes with having lived through a few decades of life's ups and downs. You learn to pick your battles, to bide your time, to wait for the right moment. I wasn't about to let her see me cry, or give her the satisfaction of knowing she'd gotten under my skin. No, I was going to handle this my way, quietly, methodically, and with a touch of flair. After all, if I was going to be the villain in her story, I might as well make it a good one. So, while she was busy scrolling through her phone and ignoring my son, I was making calls. To realtors, to lawyers, to anyone who could help me pull off the greatest disappearing act since Houdini. I started small, just gathering information at first. I called up an old friend from my book club who'd recently sold her house and asked for a recommendation. I spent a few afternoons running errands, which really meant meeting with a discreet real estate agent in the back corner of a coffee shop, discussing comps and timelines and how quickly we could get the house on the market without raising suspicion. I even dug out the old safe deposit box key and checked on the family trust, just to make sure everything was in order. It was almost funny in a way how easy it was to slip into this secret life. I'd always thought of myself as an open book, someone who wore her heart on her sleeve. But now, I found myself relishing the secrecy, the quiet thrill of planning something big right under their noses. I started to notice things I'd never paid attention to before. The way my daughter-in-law's eyes glazed over whenever I mentioned anything that didn't involve her. The way she left my son to fend for himself while she went out with her friends. The way she treated our home like a hotel she couldn't wait to check out of. It was like seeing everything in a new light, and let me tell you, it wasn't pretty. Meanwhile, my son seemed to shrink a little more each day. He'd always been so full of life, so quick with a joke or a smile, but now he just seemed tired. I tried to talk to him, to ask if he was okay, but he just brushed me off, insisting everything was fine. I could see the pain in his eyes, though. The loneliness, the frustration, the sense of being trapped. It broke my heart, but it also steeled my resolve. I wasn't just doing this for me. I was doing it for him too. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal. I still cooked dinner every night, still asked about their days, still smiled and nodded and played the part of the dutiful mother and mother-in-law. But inside, I was a storm brewing, gathering strength with every passing day. I started packing up little things here and there. Old photo albums, my grandmother's china, the quilt my mother made me when I got married. I told my daughter-in-law I was just decluttering, getting ready for spring cleaning. She barely looked up from her phone. If she noticed the growing stack of boxes in the garage, she didn't say a word. I'll admit, there were moments when I doubted myself. Was I really going to go through with this? Was I being too dramatic, too impulsive? But then I'd remember the look on my son's face, the sound of her voice, the way she'd made me feel so small in my own home. And I'd remember all the times I'd put everyone else's needs before my own, all the times I'd swallowed my pride for the sake of peace. Not this time. This time I was going to put myself and my son first. The calls with the realtor became more frequent, more urgent. We set a date for the listing, arranged for private showings, and even found a buyer who was willing to pay cash and close quickly. I worked with the lawyer to make sure everything was airtight, that the proceeds from the sale would be protected, that my son and I would have everything we needed to start fresh somewhere new. I even started looking at cottages by the sea, little places where the air was clean and the neighbors minded their own business. All the while, I kept up the charade. I smiled at my daughter-in-law over breakfast, asked about her latest shopping trip, even complimented her on the new haircut she'd gotten without so much as a word to me. I played the part so well, I almost convinced myself nothing was wrong. But underneath it all, I was counting down the days, the hours, the minutes until we could finally be free. There's a certain satisfaction in knowing you hold all the cards, in watching someone who's taken you for granted realize, too late, that the game has changed. I started to notice little things, like the way my daughter-in-law would glance at me when she thought I wasn't looking, or the way she'd get flustered when I asked about her plans for the future. Maybe she sensed something was coming, or maybe she was just too wrapped up in her own world to care. Either way, it didn't matter. The wheels were in motion, and there was no turning back. By the end of the week, everything was in place. The house was sold, the money was safe, and my son and I were ready to disappear without a trace. I felt a strange mix of fear and excitement, like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to leap into the unknown. But for the first time in a long time, I felt powerful. I felt like myself again, and as I lay in bed that night, listening to the quiet hum of the house, I knew that the silent storm I'd weathered was about to break. And when it did, nothing would ever be the same. A week later, the house was sold. Just like that. It was almost surreal how quickly it all happened, as if the universe had been waiting for me to finally take charge. The estate, every last penny, every investment, every little nest egg I'd squirreled away over the years, was transferred to a new account, one with my name and my son's, and not a single trace of my daughter-in-law's. I'd worked with a lawyer to make sure of that. I'd learned, over the years, that sometimes you have to protect what's yours, even from the people you once called family. I'd always thought of myself as generous, maybe even a little too forgiving, but this time I was determined to draw a line in the sand. No more being taken for granted. No more being the silent, invisible woman in the background of my own life. The night we left, the air was thick with summer heat, the kind that makes your skin stick to the sheets and your hair frizz no matter what you do. I'd barely slept, my mind racing with 1,000 details. Did I pack the medication? Did I remember the charger for his wheelchair? Did I leave the right documents in the right place? But underneath it all was a current of excitement, a sense of possibility I hadn't felt in years. My son and I, we were about to become outlaws. Not the kind you see in movies with black hats and 6-shooters, but the quiet kind, the ones who slip away in the dead of night, leaving nothing but questions and a trail of dust behind them. We packed up what little we needed: clothes, toiletries, a few cherished photos, the quilt my mother made, and of course the dog. I couldn't leave him behind, not after all the years he'd spent curled up at my feet, offering silent comfort when words failed. My son was nervous, I could tell. He kept asking if we were doing the right thing, if maybe we should just talk to her, try to work things out. But I knew deep down that some things can't be fixed with a conversation. Some wounds run too deep, and some people just aren't worth the effort. Getting him and his wheelchair down the gravel driveway at 2 a.m. was a comedy of errors. I nearly threw my back out, tripping over a loose stone and stifling a curse that would have made my grandmother blush. The dog, sensing the tension, kept darting back and forth, his nails clicking on the pavement like a metronome. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see a light flick on in the house, or to hear her voice calling out, demanding to know what we were doing. But the house stayed dark, silent, oblivious to the storm brewing just outside its walls. We loaded everything into the car, double-checked the locks, and took one last look at the house that had been our home for so many years. I'd raised my son there, celebrated birthdays and holidays, weathered storms both literal and figurative. I'd laughed and cried and loved within those walls, and now I was walking away. It was bittersweet, of course. How could it not be? But as I stood there, the keys heavy in my hand, I realized that home isn't just a place. It's the people you share it with, the memories you carry, the love you refuse to let go of. And in that moment, I knew I was making the right choice. Before we left, I placed a single note on the kitchen table. I'd agonized over what to say, wanting to find the perfect words to sum up everything I was feeling. In the end, I kept it simple: family is earned, not inherited. Enjoy the echo. It was both a warning and a farewell, a reminder that love and loyalty can't be demanded. They have to be given, freely and without condition. I didn't know if she'd understand, or if she'd even care, but it felt good to finally say what needed to be said. As we pulled out of the driveway, I felt a strange mix of emotions: fear, excitement, relief, and, yes, a little bit of guilt. I'd spent so many years putting everyone else first, worrying about their feelings, their needs, their happiness. Now, for the first time in a long time, I was choosing myself. I was choosing my son. And let me tell you, it felt good, liberating even. Like I'd been holding my breath for years and was finally able to exhale. The drive was quiet, the world outside our windows shrouded in darkness. My son dozed off, his head resting against the window, the dog curled up in his lap. I kept my eyes on the road, my hands steady on the wheel, my mind racing with possibilities. Where would we go? What would we do? The future was a blank slate, and for the first time in years, that didn't scare me. It thrilled me. I could go anywhere, be anyone, start over in a place where no one knew my name or my story. I could build a new life, one filled with laughter and love, and the kind of peace I'd almost forgotten existed. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a little thrill as we crossed the county line, leaving everything behind. Maybe even a touch of fear. After all, starting over at my age isn't exactly a walk in the park. But mostly, I felt free. For the first time in years, I could breathe. I could look at my son and see hope in his eyes, instead of resignation. I could imagine a future where we were both happy, both whole, both finally at peace. We drove through the night, the miles slipping away beneath our tires, the past growing smaller and smaller in the rearview mirror. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but I knew one thing for certain: whatever happened, we'd face it together. And that, more than anything. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I felt a sense of possibility I hadn't felt in years. The world was wide open, and for the first time in a long time, so was my heart. We were outlaws, yes, but we were also survivors, dreamers, and most importantly, a family. A real family, built on love and loyalty and the kind of strength that can't be broken by a few cruel words. And as we drove toward our new beginning, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we were ready. Because sometimes, the greatest escape isn't from a place, it's from the person you used to be. And in that moment, I was finally truly free. Now my son and I live in a cozy little cottage by the sea. It's the kind of place I used to dream about when life felt too heavy, when the walls of that old house seemed to close in around me, and the weight of unspoken words pressed down on my chest. The cottage is small, but it's ours. Whitewashed walls, blue shutters, and a garden that's more wildflowers than weeds. The salty breeze drifts in through the open windows, carrying the sound of gulls and the distant crash of waves. Every morning, I wake up to the sun rising over the water, painting the sky in colors I'd forgotten existed. There's a peace here I never thought I'd find again, a sense of possibility that makes even the simplest moments feel extraordinary. We laugh more now, my son and I, real belly-deep laughter that bubbles up out of nowhere and leaves us both gasping for breath. Sometimes it's over something silly, a burnt piece of toast, the dog chasing his own tail, or the way the wind whips my hair into a wild, tangled mess. Other times it's just the joy of being together, of knowing that we made it through the storm and found our way to the other side. My son is different here too. He's lighter somehow, as if the weight he carried for so long has finally been lifted. He spends hours out on the porch, sketching the coastline or reading in the sun, his wheelchair tracks weaving through the sand like a secret path only we know about. He smiles more, jokes more, and every now and then, I catch a glimpse of the boy he used to be, the one who believed anything was possible. We eat what we want now too. No more picking at salads or pretending to enjoy bland, tasteless meals just to keep the peace. We make big, hearty breakfasts, pancakes dripping with syrup, crispy bacon, and fresh fruit from a market down the road. We bake bread together, filling the cottage with the warm, yeasty smell that always reminds me of my mother's kitchen. Sometimes we even have dessert before dinner, just because we can. There's a freedom in these small rebellions, a reminder that life is too short to deny yourself the things that bring you joy. And perhaps best of all, we don't have to tiptoe around anyone's sharp tongue. There are no more whispered insults, no more icy silences, no more feeling like an unwelcome guest in our own home. The cottage is filled with kindness, with gentle words and easy laughter. We talk about everything and nothing, our hopes, our fears, the silly dreams we never dared to share before. My son tells me about the things he wants to do, the places he wants to see, and for the first time in years, I believe we might actually get there. We're building a new life, one day at a time, and every day feels like a gift. Sometimes, though, I find myself wondering about her. My daughter-in-law. I wonder if she ever found the note I left on the kitchen table, the one that said, "Family is earned, not inherited. Enjoy the echo." I wonder if she stood there in the empty house, the silence pressing in around her, and realized what she'd lost. Or maybe she never gave it a second thought, too busy chasing after the next shiny thing to notice that the foundation had crumbled beneath her feet. I'll never know, and honestly, I don't need to. That chapter of my life is closed, the door locked, and the key thrown into the sea. I wish her no harm, but I also wish her no part in my future. Some people are meant to be lessons, not lifelong companions. There are moments, of course, when the past creeps in. Late at night, when the world is quiet and the only sound is the distant call of a foghorn. I think about all the years I spent trying to be enough, trying to hold everything together with nothing but stubbornness and love. I think about the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the way I let myself become invisible for the sake of peace. And then I look at my son, at the way he's blossomed in this new life, and I know I made the right choice. We both did. We chose ourselves, chose each other, and in doing so, we found a happiness I never thought possible. The locals here have welcomed us with open arms. There's a little cafe down the road where the owner knows our names and always saves us a table by the window. The neighbors wave when we pass, sometimes stopping to chat about the weather or the best place to buy fresh fish. There's a sense of community here, a feeling of belonging that I never quite found in the old neighborhood. But it's not perfect. Nothing ever is. But it's real and it's ours. We've started new traditions, too. Every Friday night we have a movie marathon, old classics, new releases, whatever strikes our fancy. We make popcorn, pile up blankets on the couch, and let ourselves get lost in someone else's story for a while. On Sundays we walk down to the beach and collect seashells, our pockets heavy with treasures from the tide. Sometimes we just sit and watch the waves, letting the rhythm of the ocean wash away whatever worries we carried into the day. I've learned a lot in this new beginning. I've learned that it's never too late to start over, never too late to choose happiness, never too late to put yourself first. I've learned that family isn't just about blood or marriage. It's about love, respect, and the willingness to stand by each other when the world gets rough. I've learned that I am stronger than I ever knew, and that sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away from what no longer serves you. So, let me ask you, what would you have done? Would you have stayed silent, swallowing your pain for the sake of keeping the peace? Or would you have packed up and vanished like a couple of rebels, daring to believe that something better was waiting on the other side? I know my answer, and I hope, if you ever find yourself standing at the edge of your own storm, you'll remember that you have the power to choose too. Life is short, my friends. Too short to waste on people who don't see your worth. Too short to spend in places that make you feel small. So here's to new beginnings, to laughter and love, to the courage to start over. No matter how old you are or how many times you've been knocked down, here's to choosing yourself, and to the beautiful, wild, unpredictable adventure that comes next. If you enjoyed this little tale of revenge, freedom, and starting over at any age, hit that subscribe button. Because trust me, life after 50 is just getting interesting. And you won't want to miss what happens next.